Hi everybody, I'm so excited for today's recipe. We are having chickpea nuggets. So usually when I find a new recipe online, I change a whole bunch of stuff about it and make it my own. This one, I didn't have to change hardly anything at all. So, huge shout out to the website listed above. So, like I said, we're having chickpea nuggets. If your kids like chicken nuggets, they're gonna like these, which is crazy because they have vegetables, they have artichoke hearts. You're probably thinking, my kids will never eat artichoke hearts, but they will. So, the reason I like this recipe so much is because it's so easy, so easy. I have a can of artichoke hearts. I'm gonna stick this into my food processor. I had already drained them, by the way. And I'm just gonna give this a few pulses until they're about the size of a chickpea. Now the other ingredients are just going to go right in here and we're going to keep pulsing. So I have a drained and rinsed can of chickpeas. I have I have 1/4 cup of chopped onions and 2 garlic cloves that I have minced. I have 1/2 cup of panko breadcrumbs, 1/2 cup of cornmeal, a pinch of cayenne pepper, and salt to taste. So you know me, lots of salt. And I also have 2 teaspoons of red wine vinegar and 1/2 teaspoon of liquid smoke. They're all just going to go in there. And we're going to pulse until, we don't want it to be a puree. We don't want it to be mushy and gross. We still want to see little chunks, but no whole pieces of chickpea. I'm going to scrape this down. Mine is just about there already. Okay, now I am just going to cover this with plastic and put it in the fridge for ½ an hour. While that mixture sits in the fridge, it's going to marry the flavors together and the breadcrumbs are going to absorb a lot of the moisture and it's going to stick together really nicely and we're going to make little patties. In the meantime, we're going to get a few other things ready. I have a large pan here. Now, you don't want a non-stick pan. That would just ruin pan frying in a non-stick pan. It would just ruin it completely. It also doesn't matter too much what size your pan is, but if you have a smaller pan, you're going to have to just work in smaller batches and it'll just take you longer to finish the cooking process. So I've got my pan here and I have filled it till the bottom is covered and it's up about 1/3 of an inch maybe, because our little nuggets are going to be, I don't know, maybe a 1/2 inch to it, like 3/4 of an inch high, and you want it to go halfway up your nugget. Also, I have here 2/3 cup of breadcrumbs, 2/3 cup of cornmeal, a pinch of cayenne, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of paprika, and I just mix those together with a fork. I also have here another container with 2 tablespoons of whole wheat flour and a 1/4 cup of ground flaxseed, Flaxseed can be found at health food stores or Winco in bulk, but most stores should have it. Also, I've got a cup of milk that I've got waiting that I'm going to put into that mixture, just not yet. I've got a sheet pan out here because I'm going to do some asparagus. I'm going to show you this really quickly. To prepare asparagus, I start bending here at the top, and I just bend it down until it snaps. If you want a more extensive tutorial on that, you can see my how-to videos. I've already broken up the rest of them like that, and I'm going to rinse them off and get them dry. So after I rinse them, I just let them drip for a little bit, and then I dried them a little bit more thoroughly with a paper towel, just kind of rubbed it on there. You want to get the water off so that your oil will stick on it. So I just put mine directly out of the pan. I'm not going to do anything special with this asparagus today. My kids eat it really well because they like Veggie Tales, and this always reminds them of junior asparagus. They're like, I'm eating junior, which sounds morbid when you say it that way. But you just give it a drizzle over it and toss it around like that, if you can see it. Then you'll position them back out again. It's okay if they're touching, you just probably don't want them overlapping really. And then you'll salt and pepper them. When we get closer to the time that we're ready to do our nuggets, I'm gonna preheat the oven to 350, and these will go in for 15 minutes. Now it has been a half an hour. I've taken my chickpea mixture out of the fridge. My blades come out here. If your blades don't come out, then you'll have to put your mixture into another bowl. I'm going to preheat my stove, or my pan, to a medium heat, and my oven to 350 degrees. And now we're gonna add the milk to our flaxseed and flour. So just 1 cup. I am using almond milk. You can use any milk you would like, but I suggest you do not use anything flavored or sweetened. We'll just stir that with a fork until it's well mixed. As this sits, it's going to get thicker, more like a batter, but if you let it sit too long, then it's going to start to get really gummy. If it gets to that point, you can add a little bit more milk and thin it out some, but it usually only needs to sit there for about 5 minutes. Maybe about after 15 is when you're going to start having problems with it. That's why I do it right before I start making my nuggets. Forming the nuggets is really simple. You're just going to take a little handful here. It's just going to go in the palm of your hand, and you're going to smash it together and make what looks like a nugget. It doesn't particularly matter how big or small you make them, just as long as they're all about the same size and thickness. Thickness! Now when I'm making this, sometimes I will get bigger pieces of artichoke that didn't chop up as well as I wanted it to. I just take those right out. You can, of course, prevent that by chopping the artichoke hearts for a longer period of time before you add everything else. After I finished forming my nuggets, I put my asparagus into the oven and set my timer for 15 minutes. I also put on an apron because if the oil splashes or spits a little, I don't want it on my clothes. Alright, so when you're breading things, you want to have a wet hand and a dry hand so that you don't get like all these crumbs and things caked onto your fingers. So I have my wet hand here, I've covered that. Now I'm going to use my dry hand to cover it with the breadcrumbs and cornmeal mixture. And I'm just going to place this directly into my pan of oil. And you'll do that with each one. And if you have a smaller pan, like I said, you'll have to do this in batches. I have another plate with paper towels over here ready for the finished nuggets. Here's my first batch, getting nice and brown on the other side, on the bottom, so I'm going to flip it over to the other side. This only takes just a couple of minutes on each side. These were the last ones I put in, so I'm going to give them a little bit longer. I've pulled my asparagus out of the oven and I'm waiting for my nuggets to finish cooking on the other side. While I'm waiting, I just wanted to give you a couple more tips. On your oil, if it is smoking, it's definitely too hot. Turn down the heat, remove it from the heat and let it cool down. Once it stops, you can get going again. The way you know that it's hot enough is that it's going to shimmer. It's going to look really shiny. And if you drop a breadcrumb in there, it's going to do that sizzly, bubbly cooking thing. You know what I'm talking about, right? So that's how you know that it's ready. Also, if you noticed, I left a fork in the flaxseed. That's because periodically I like to stop and stir it. It just helps keep it mixed together because it starts to separate a little bit, especially as it's doing its thickening. So that's all. So here's our finished product. Doesn't it look so yummy? Chickpea nuggets. I put some ranch on here because my kids love to eat it with ranch. It's also good with barbecue sauce, ketchup, whatever floats your boat. And our roasted asparagus.